Hello guys, welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about tuning out the secondaries on my Holley double pumper. Let's get into it. Alrighty guys, so this is what a carb cheater graph looks like here. Whenever you open one up after you recorded one and you hit graph log, this is what it'll look like. And what I want to take a look at today here is this section right here. So let's just start off with what we're looking at here. So the light blue is manifold vacuum in inches of mercury. The red is AFR. And then your black is RPM. We were driving out of town at this point, so kind of fluctuation in speed as we were going along. When it comes to about right here, I punch it open a little bit, and we shoot from 650 RPM, so we were just idling to about 1,000. So I punched it a little bit, probably squealed the tires, knowing me, and then laid off it a little bit, probably because I squealed the tires, and then manifold vacuum it back up. But then here, you can see I punched it wide open. Our manifold vacuum dropped to 0.701, which means that there was a lot of vacuum going on in the manifold. There was a lot of airflow happening. And then as you can see, the RPM went up according to that. And the RPM rose pretty good until it hit right here, which is right at, so about right here, you can see the AFR dropped to about 12.3. And as you can see, I think it kind of missed a little bit if I recall. And I kind of thought it was because it was lean, but according to this, it's because it was rich, which is just one of the things that helps with a carb cheater and having an AFR gauge, so you can actually know what's going on with your engine. But as you can see from there, it evened out a little bit, and then it went even richer all the way down to like 11.5, which is way too rich. And I think, but it still pulled like a freight train. It seems like that's a pretty good line right there. And then it looks like I backed off about 4,500 RPM. Because I was probably going pretty fast at that point. That's about 50 miles an hour. This whole time, a wide open throttle, our manifold vacuum's about 1, which is pretty cool, 1 to 1.5. Holley rates their carburetors at 1 to 1.5 inches of mercury. So at 1 to 1.5 inches of mercury is whenever your carburetor is supposed to flow the CFM that Holley rates it at. So I have 800 CFM Holley carburetor. So at that point, we were definitely flowing 800 CFM, as long as what Holley tells us is true. As long as I understand what we're looking at correctly. So here's the problem. That is too rich. I feel like that is entirely too rich. So what I do, I have to fix the problem. After doing that, I took the carburetor, the secondary bolt off. I jetted down 3 sizes and swapped out the power valve from a 9.5 to a 6.5 in the secondaries. So let's see what difference that made. This is after swapping out the jets and the power valve. I will also note that it was 20 degrees warmer at this day than it was the other day, or roughly thereabouts. So it still ran a little rich. But let's take a look at this here. So at this point, you can see here about 600, 625 RPM. And then I hammered it wide open, looks like here. Well, I gave her some beans. And about right here, I punched it wide open. As you can see, it took off a lot better than it did the first time. The line is a lot steeper, a lot more straight up and down than it was before, which means that we were accelerating at a greater speed, which I think is due to the jet change. Also could be due to air quality. That's the only thing I changed really between this time and another time. There was no other change. But as you can see, the AFR dropped to about 12.6, 12.3, which is far better than 11.5. And I'm much more happy with that. However, I would like it to be in about the 13s. About 13 area would be much more preferable, much more desired. So you can see here about 5,100, 5,175 RPM. I downshifted to second, or I upshifted to second gear. And as you can see, this is also really cool to look at the RPM change whenever you shift gears, and also the slower the ramp is. So you see first gear obviously is going to pull a lot harder than second gear. So the ramp is much steeper in first gear. Upshifted to second gear, the ramp isn't quite as steep, but it's still, still pretty steep, still pretty cool. And then third gear obviously is going to be even less. So we went from 5,175 to 3,400, and then up to 4,700, and then back down to 34. About 1,700 RPM change from first gear to second gear, and then another 1,400 RPM change from second gear to third gear. So pretty darn cool stuff here. As we can see, we definitely fixed the problem. We're definitely aided in the problem. However, I do want to jet down, I think, 2 more sizes, and then we'll try that again. But as you can see, we are doing a lot better than we were before, for sure. And we're still pulling about 1.5 to 1 inch of mercury at wide open throttle, which is great, which means we're flowing all kinds of CFM. I mean, heck, to me, this means I could even throw a bigger carburetor on there, potentially, maximize it. Or one project I want to do in the future is to port my carburetor that I have, kind of mess around with throttle blades and stuff, and make it see if we can't flow more air. But as you can see, our cruising AFR is pretty darn good, 14.7. I guess we could probably, this is a lot of jankiness. Let's look at a different graph that is better for cruising here. This here is our cruising. We kind of got going here about 1400 RPM, so it's about 40 miles an hour, probably 40, 50 miles an hour. I guess it'd be about 35, 40 miles an hour here. But as you can see, everything's a lot more consistent here. AFR is still kind of all over the place. I kind of attribute that to where my O2 sensor is and my header. At lower throttle angles, the exhaust pulses are farther apart, so it can't accurately sniff the air as well as it could if they were closer together, farther down the exhaust, if that makes sense. But we can see we're doing pretty good. I wouldn't want to change anything in the cruising circuit. It cruises down the road incredibly well. I really can't complain at all. So yeah, I think we need to jet down a couple more sizes in the secondaries yet and see what that does. So let's go do that right now. I keep everything I need to swap jets in the trunk of the car. In this handy dandy little box. So step one to basically working on any old car is removing the air cleaner. Now unlock the carburetor. Whenever you come swapping jets, you're going to need two basic tools, a flathead screwdriver and a 5/8 wrench. At least when it comes to swapping jets on a double pumper with the fuel line that I have. The first thing you're going to want to do is take your fuel line loose. This fuel line kind of sucks, honestly. This fuel rail. You got to hold the big one with the inch wrench. And loosen the second one. One thing you want to make sure you do whenever you're messing with the bowl is you put your rag down to catch any fuel that you might spill so you don't get it all over your intake and ruin your pretty paint job. And you can also use one of these here, a lid for a rattle can paint can, and you can also use that to catch fuel as you're going as well. Usually I don't get much fuel come out of the actual fuel line, but it does happen occasionally. Take your fuel line loose. Now what we're going to want to do is take our 4 bowl screws loose as well. Need you a flat head screwdriver. I try and take them loose all consistently. That way we don't warp anything or put any extra tension on anything. So break them all free and then slowly work your way around, kind of. Next, you're going to want to take your little cup thing and stick it under one of the bottom 2 screws. Whichever one's easier to get to. In my case, because of the way the intake is, this side is far easier. And then you're going to want to pull this screw all the way out and use it as a drain for your bowl. Now fuel will come out of this for sure, so most of that drained out. Put your screw somewhere where you won't lose it. Make sure you keep the donut gasket on it if it's still on there. Go ahead and take your other screws loose. At this point, if the bowl's been off recently, it is highly possible that the bowl will want to fall off. You have to hold it there while you get the rest of the screws out. It's very important you don't rip the gasket. Sometimes the little donuts stay in the hole and sometimes they stick to the screw. It just depends. This is kind of a messy job. You're going to get gas spilled somewhere and you're going to spill it on your hands, but you can minimize the amount that you spill. So now we're ready to remove the bowl. I have really old school cork carburetor gaskets on here off of a used carburetor that I tore apart a long time ago. So these gaskets are just probably old and probably shouldn't use them, but they do work. So remove the bowl there. It's helpful to hold this fuel line back as you go, but it is pretty simple and straightforward. So the bowl has been removed, set it somewhere handy, and now we can access the jets. I'll try and get you guys a better view of that. Actually, because I just had this carburetor apart not long ago, I should be fine popping off the metering block. So that's what I'm going to do. Just go ahead and, yep, it'll just come right out, and that way I can show you guys a little closer the jets. This here is our secondary metering block. Got our jets down here. That's what we're going to be swapping out. This here is our power valve on the back. It is always closed, but when the vacuum gets strong enough, this here plunger collapses, it goes down. This spring here just resists the pull of vacuum. These are our jets we're going to swap out right now. Right now I have a 6.5 power valve in there. So you just take a flathead screwdriver, or if you have the Holley jet tool, you can use that too. But you want to make sure you have a nice wide screwdriver. Currently we have a 73 in there, so we're going to swap those out for 71s, I guess. Got our nice jet board there. That's 74, so we'll put our 73s right here. Just go ahead and get those, don't have to crank down on them, just get them nice and snug. And you just swap jets. Now it's time to bolt it back on. So there's some alignment pegs on the back of the metering block that have to align with holes on the actual carburetor body itself. It just sits right like that. And then, very important, usually what I will do is take this here fuel bowl and squirt the accelerator pump shot out into the rocks or something, because it's very annoying. Because you have to collapse, to get the accelerator pump linkage back together, you have to collapse this, push it down with your finger, and then pick up on the actual linkage on the body itself to slip that on underneath there. And you also have to juggle the fuel line at the same time. It's a lot to work at, but once you do it a couple times, you get pretty good at it. So, I got everything lined up. This here will work. Squirt fuel. This here, our fuel line's in the hole. We can go ahead and put a couple threads on there. Now you're going to take your bowl screws and put them back in. Once you get one, you're pretty darn close. I try and do them staggered. That's the way you're supposed to do it anyway, in an X pattern. Once you get them all started, you can go ahead and grab your flathead screwdriver. Sink them all in a little bit. Now you don't want to crank down on these too much, just get them nice and snug. We're not trying to hold a cylinder head onto an engine block, we're just trying to keep out 7 pounds of fuel pressure, so it's nothing crazy here. So take your 5/8 wrench and make sure your fuel line is nice and tight. Almost forgot. The last part I usually do when I swap jets is to reuse the fuel that I just dumped out. It'd be very wasteful if I just got rid of the gas that I dumped out of the bowl. So I take my little funnel that my brother 3D printed me, stick it in the vent, and then I can pour the gas back down into the into the bowl, so I don't waste any gas. Now take your rag and wipe off the incredible mess you just made all over your carburetor. So guys, that will wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you want me to do more videos like this, let me know in the comment section below. So that's how you swap Holley jets and power valves if you're into that. Take another test drive here soon, do another pull and graph it, and then see if we tuned out our little rich problem. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time on It'll Run.